The first time I noticed it, I almost didn't believe my own eyes. I was out mowing the lawn on a perfect Saturday morning, the smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air, when I saw it. The property line. The old wooden stakes had been there for decades, placed by my dad and old Mr. Henderson back when a handshake was a contract. But now, there was a new stake, bright orange and shiny, driven into the ground a good 1.5 feet onto my side of the line. My first thought was, no way. There's just no way. I actually walked over, shut off the mower, and just stared at it. I even got out my own tape measure from the garage, the one I use for every DIY project. I measured from the corner of my house, just like the property survey showed, and there it was, in cold, hard inches. 18 of them. My 18 inches. I felt this heat creep up the back of my neck. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was a deliberate land grab. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe his contractor messed up. So I went over, knocked on his door, and asked him about it as nicely as I could. And you know what he did? He looked me dead in the eye and told me I was mistaken. He said, "John, that line has always been right there. Always been right there." I stood on my own driveway, looking at land I have been paying taxes on for 15 years, and he was telling me it was his. The audacity of it just took my breath away. It's a sickening feeling, realizing your neighbor, the guy you wave to every morning, is perfectly willing to steal from you and then lie to your face about it. It makes you question everything. It's not about the dirt. It's about the principle. It's about the respect, or the complete lack of it. Have any of you ever dealt with a neighbor pulling a stunt like this? Let me know in the comments, because I have a feeling this story is just getting started. And trust me, you're going to want to subscribe to see how this all plays out. The first time I noticed it, I almost didn't believe my own eyes. I was out mowing the lawn on a perfect Saturday morning, the smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air, when I saw it. The corner post of my neighbor Bill's new fence was a good 1.5 feet onto my property. I shut off the mower, just staring. My mind started racing. Was I losing it? Had I just never noticed the property line correctly? I went inside and pulled out the old survey from when we bought the house 20 years ago. I unrolled those brittle blueprints right there on the kitchen table, my wife looking over my shoulder. And there it was, clear as day, a solid black line, with our lot number on one side and Bill's on the other. That fence post was sitting squarely in our backyard. So I did what any reasonable neighbor would do. I walked over, knocked on his door, and with a smile I said, "Hey, Bill, beautiful day for a fence, huh? I think there might be a little mix-up with the placement." I showed him the survey. He looked at it, then back at me, and gave me this dismissive wave. "Ah, these old surveys are never accurate, Mike. The guy who put my fence in, he's a professional. He knows what he's doing." He just closed the door. I was left standing on his porch, feeling this heat rise up my neck. It wasn't just about the land anymore. It was the sheer disrespect. That small strip of grass represented something much bigger. My home, my family's space, the principle of the thing. For the next week, I'd look out my kitchen window every morning, and that fence felt like it was mocking me. It was a daily reminder that someone thought they could just take what wasn't theirs and shrug it off. I wasn't going to be that guy who just rolls over. This is America. You stand up for what's yours. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to yell or cause a scene. I was going to handle it the right way, by the book. I hired my own licensed surveyor to come out and stake the property line with bright orange flags. It cost me $500. but it was worth every penny for the peace of mind. When those flags went in, it was a silent, undeniable declaration. The evidence was now physically planted in the earth for everyone to see. Have you ever had a neighbor try to pull a fast one on you? Let me know in the comments below what you did, because this story is just getting started. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next, well, let's just say it involved a very formal-looking envelope and a lesson in property law that Bill never saw coming. The first time I noticed it, I almost didn't believe my own eyes. I was out mowing the lawn on a perfect Saturday morning, the smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air when I saw it. The corner post of my neighbor Bill's new fence was a good 1.5 feet onto my property. I shut off the mower, just stood there staring. My mind raced back to the property survey I'd had done just last year, the one tucked safely in my filing cabinet. I knew my land, I knew where my line was, and Bill's fence was stealing it. I decided to give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe it was a simple mistake, an honest error by the crew he'd hired. So I walked over, knocked on his door, and asked him about it, polite as could be. "Hey, Bill, noticed the new fence looks great, but I think the guys might have been a little off on the survey lines on the east side." His reaction was cold. He didn't even invite me in, just stood in the doorway, arms crossed, and said, "My guys know what they're doing. The line is where the line is." Then he shut the door, just like that. I was left standing on his porch, feeling like a fool. That's when the anger started to simmer. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated land grab, a quiet theft of a piece of what was rightfully mine. For the next week, I watched him. Every evening, he'd be out there, meticulously watering the new lawn he'd planted on my land. He was putting down roots, literally and figuratively, trying to establish a new status quo. He thought I was just going to roll over. He thought wrong. I pulled out that property survey, made copies, and then I did what any red-blooded American does when they're being pushed around. I called a lawyer. It wasn't about the land itself anymore. It was about the principle. You don't get to just take what isn't yours and think there won't be consequences. Have you ever had a neighbor try to pull a fast one on you? Let me know in the comments, because this story is just getting started. Make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next, well, let's just say Bill wasn't smiling for long. The first time I noticed the new survey stakes, I honestly thought it was a mistake. I mean, we'd been neighbors with the Millers for 5 years. We shared beers on the 4th of July. Our kids played together. But then, one Saturday morning, I saw him out there with a post-hole digger, and he was setting his new fence posts a solid 1.5 feet onto my property. My property. I felt this heat creep up the back of my neck. I walked over, trying to keep it friendly. "Hey, Bob," I said, "I think your surveyor's stakes might be off a bit." He didn't even look up from his work, just grunted and said, "Nope, my land," just like that. Cold. It was like a switch had flipped. The guy I'd loaned my lawnmower to was now claiming a chunk of my backyard as his own. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I went and got my own property survey done, paid a pretty penny for it too. And guess what? I was right. The official plat map, signed and sealed, showed the property line clear as day, right where my old rusted fence used to be. I marched that document over to him, thinking this would be the end of it. "Bob, look," I said, holding it out. "It's all right here in black and white." He glanced at it, smirked, and said the words that made my blood run cold. "Paper doesn't mean much. Possession is 9/10 of the law." He was literally banking on me being too nice, too conflict-averse to do anything about it. He was counting on me to just roll over. And that's when the real battle began. It wasn't about the land anymore, not really. It was about principle. It was about not letting someone bully you just because they think they can. I spent nights lying awake, my mind racing. Do I call the cops? Do I get a lawyer? The stress was eating me alive. Every time I looked out my kitchen window, I saw that encroaching fence line, and it felt like a personal insult. I was so angry I almost did something I'd regret. But then I realized, this is America. We have systems for this. We have laws. And I was going to use every single one of them. So I made a choice. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to have a screaming match over the begonias. I was going to be smarter. I documented everything. Photos, the survey, our conversations. I made my case bulletproof. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how I did it, because chances are you might face a neighbor like Bob one day. What would you do if someone tried to steal a piece of your American dream? Let me know in the comments, and make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next? Well, let's just say Bob had no idea who he was messing with. The first time I saw the new fence posts, I actually laughed. I was holding my morning coffee, looking out at the backyard, and there they were, freshly dug holes about 2 feet onto my side of the property line. I thought, Old Man Henderson must be losing his marbles. He's just getting his measurements wrong for his new vegetable patch. I even considered going over with a tape measure to help him out. That's how naive I was. But a week later, the laughter died in my throat. I came home from work to see the full skeleton of the new fence already up, and it wasn't a mistake. That 6-foot-tall cedar monstrosity was running in a dead straight line, directly through what I knew for a fact was my land. He'd stolen a strip of my yard about 2 feet wide and 50 feet long. It was like someone had just casually rolled up a piece of my life and tucked it into their pocket. I felt a hot, disbelieving anger start to boil in my gut. This wasn't just about grass. This was about principle. This was about a man looking me in the eye for years at neighborhood barbecues, and then deciding my property, my investment, was his for the taking. I didn't confront him. Not yet. My dad, a contractor, always told me, in a dispute, paper beats passion every single time. So I went down to the county recorder's office. I spent an entire Saturday afternoon in that dusty basement, pulling the old plat maps for our lots. And there it was, in faded blue lines and precise, handwritten measurements from 1952. My property line was exactly where I knew it was. I had the proof, a cold, hard piece of history that made his new fence look like exactly what it was: theft. Armed with that map, I felt a strange sense of calm. The anger was still there, but now it had a direction. I made copies. I highlighted the relevant section. I wasn't going to yell. I was going to present the facts and watch him squirm. It's a feeling I think a lot of you can relate to, that moment you realize you hold all the cards and the other person just doesn't know it yet. Have you ever had a neighbor try to pull a fast one on you? Let me know in the comments, because this story is far from over. Don't forget to subscribe to see how this property line war turns out. Trust me, you won't believe what happened next. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was just seeing things. I was out mowing the lawn on a Saturday morning, the smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air. When I caught a glimpse of the property line, something was off. The old oak tree, the one that's been the unofficial marker between my yard and Old Man Henderson's for as long as I've lived here, suddenly looked closer. I shut off the mower, wiped the sweat from my brow, and just stared. It was subtle, maybe just a few inches. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe the heat was getting to me. But a knot started to tighten in my stomach. This wasn't just about grass. This was about principle. So, I did what any reasonable American would do. I went down to the county records office. Let me tell you, that place is a special kind of purgatory. Fluorescent lights, the smell of old paper, and a line that moved slower than a snail on salt. But I needed proof. I got the official plat map, the one with all the precise measurements and angles. I even paid for a certified surveyor's report from when I bought the house. I had the documents. I had the facts. I felt armed and ready. That confidence lasted about as long as a snowball in July. I marched over to Henderson's place, papers in hand, my heart doing a nervous tap dance against my ribs. He was out there, watering his prize-winning roses like he didn't have a care in the world. I held up the plat map, my finger pointing right at the property line. "Jerry," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "I think there's been a misunderstanding about the fence." He just looked at me, his expression blank. Then he slowly put down his hose. "Fence looks fine to me, Mike," he said, his voice flat. He didn't even glance at the papers. He just turned his back on me and went right back to watering his flowers. The sheer, brazen denial of it left me speechless. It was like arguing with a brick wall, and that's when the real battle began. Because when a man looks you dead in the eye and denies a truth you're holding in your hands, it stops being about a few inches of dirt. It becomes a test of character. It's a quiet declaration of war fought with shovels and legal documents instead of bullets. What would you do if your neighbor just decided your land was now his? Let me know in the comments and subscribe, because this fight is just getting started. The first time I noticed it, I thought I was just seeing things. You know how it is? When you've stared at the same backyard for 15 years, your eyes can play tricks on you. But the next morning, with my coffee in hand, I saw it clearly. Old Man Henderson's wooden fence post wasn't lining up with the plum tree anymore. It was off by a good 6 inches, creeping into my side of the property. My own land. I felt that hot, tight feeling in my chest, the kind you get when someone tries to take what's yours. I decided to check the property line myself. I dug out the old survey from when we bought the place, the corners marked with iron pins driven deep into the soil. Grabbing a shovel from the garage, I started digging where the pin should have been near the corner of our lots. Nothing. Just dirt and roots. I kept digging, my shovel hitting something metallic a foot down. It wasn't the pin. It was a bent piece of rebar. Someone had dug up the original marker and moved it. My stomach dropped. This wasn't some innocent mistake. This was calculated. I marched over to Henderson's front door, the survey map crumpled in my sweaty hand. He answered with that folksy smile of his, but his eyes didn't match. I laid it out plain. "Tom," I said, "your fence is on my land." He just chuckled, told me I must be confused, that the ground must have shifted. "Ground doesn't shift 1.5 feet, Tom." I showed him the map, pointed to where the pin should be versus where I'd found his rebar. His smile vanished. "That's a mighty serious accusation, neighbor." The word neighbor felt like a threat. That's when I knew I couldn't handle this with a handshake and a smile. This was going to be a fight. I drove straight to the county recorder's office and filed a formal complaint. I wasn't just protecting a strip of grass, I was protecting my home, my investment, the legacy I'm building for my family. Let this be a lesson to all of us. Know your property lines, check your surveys, because sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought in some far-off place, but right over your own back fence. Have you ever had a property line dispute? Tell me your story in the comments below. And if you want to see how this all plays out, make sure you're subscribed. This is only the beginning. The first time I saw that fresh trench line cutting through the dew-covered grass, I thought it was a mistake. Maybe old man Henderson was just confused. His memory finally starting to fade after all these years. I mean, we'd been neighbors for 15 years. We shared beers on the 4th of July. He'd borrowed my ladder more times than I could count. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I walked over, put on my friendliest smile, and said, "Hey, Frank, looks like your surveyor got a little overzealous with the markers." He didn't even look up from the post he was setting, just grunted and said, "Nope, my land." Just like that. 3 words that felt like a punch to the gut. The property line had been settled for decades. Our kids had grown up with that invisible line as the law of the land. And now he was just redrawing the map, stealing a 2-foot strip right out of my backyard. Let me tell you, the rage that boiled up in me was something primal. It wasn't about the land itself, not really. It was about the principle, the sheer bald-faced audacity of it. My first instinct? To go full scorched earth. I wanted to march right back to my shed, grab my sledgehammer, and reduce his new fence posts to splinters. I envisioned a screaming match right there in the morning quiet, something the whole block would talk about for weeks. But as I stood there, my hands clenched into fists, I remembered something my dad always told me. You never win a mud fight with a pig. You both get dirty, and the pig enjoys it. So I took a breath, a deep, shaky one that tasted like anger and betrayal. I walked back inside my house, my heart hammering against my ribs. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I went straight to my filing cabinet and pulled out the thick, dusty folder labeled House. I dug past the mortgage papers and the appliance warranties until I found it, the official plat survey from when we bought the place. There it was, in crisp, undeniable black and white lines. My property, my 2 feet of grass. That piece of paper was my shield. It was my calm in the storm. It meant I didn't have to get into a shouting match. I didn't have to lower myself to his level. I had the law on my side. I made a copy, slipped it into a clear plastic sleeve to protect it from the morning dew, and walked back outside. My hands were steady now. The anger was still there, but it was a cold, focused thing. I walked right up to where he was still working, the thump, thump, thump of his post driver the only sound. I didn't say a word. I just held up the survey, my finger pointing directly to the property line. I let the document do the talking. His eyes flicked from the paper to my face, and for the first time, I saw a crack in his stubborn facade. It wasn't a victory yet, not by a long shot, but it was the first move in a war I was not going to lose. Have you ever had a neighbor try to pull a fast one on you? Let me know in the comments below what you did, because this story is just getting started. And subscribe, because you're not going to believe what happened next. It started with a gut feeling. You know that instinct you get when something in your own backyard just feels off? I was out grilling some burgers on a Sunday afternoon, enjoying the sun, when I noticed it. The property line. The old oak tree on my side seemed closer to the fence than I remembered. A lot closer. I chalked it up to my imagination at first. Maybe I was just tired, but the feeling wouldn't go away, so I did what any reasonable American would do. I went and found the old survey from when I bought the house, the one buried in a filing cabinet with 1,000 other important documents I never look at. I unrolled that brittle paper on my kitchen table, my heart starting to thump a little harder. I traced the lines with my finger from the steel pin at the front corner of the lot to the one in the back. And then I saw it. A clear, undeniable discrepancy. According to this legally binding document, my neighbor's new, shiny white vinyl fence was sitting a solid 1.5 feet on my property. 1.5 feet. He hadn't just nudged it, he'd taken a decent-sized bite out of my land. The anger was immediate, a hot flush up my neck. This wasn't a simple mistake. This was a calculated land grab. But before I did anything stupid, I had to be sure. I couldn't just go storming over there accusing him. I needed cold, hard, undeniable proof. So I called up a professional surveyor. A few days, and a not insignificant amount of money later, a guy named Dave was in my yard with his tripod and his little spinning prism on a pole, and Dave confirmed it. He drove a fresh, bright orange pin into the ground right where my property line was supposed to be. And there it was, in the harsh light of day, that pristine white fence, standing there like a liar, a full 18 inches on my side of that pin. That's when the reality of the situation truly sank in. This wasn't just about a strip of grass. This was about principle. This was about the value of my home, my investment, my little piece of the American dream. He was literally stealing my equity, 1 inch of sod at a time. And he'd done it so casually, thinking I wouldn't notice, thinking he could just expand his kingdom into mine. The disrespect was staggering. It's a feeling I know some of you have probably had. That violation when someone you have to live next to decides your boundaries are just suggestions. What would you have done in that moment? Let me know in the comments. And if you want to see how this all played out, make sure you're subscribed, because what happened next, you won't believe it. The first time I saw that fresh line in the dirt, I honestly thought I was losing my mind. I'd mow my lawn on a Saturday, the property line clear as day between my manicured Kentucky bluegrass and Old Man Henderson's weedy patch. But by Tuesday, there it was, a faint new scrape in the soil, a little closer to my house. Just a couple of inches. I'd stare at it, then back at the old fence post, my internal compass spinning. Was it always that close to my azalea bushes? I started questioning my own memory, my own eyes. That's the genius of a slow creep, isn't it? It makes you feel crazy before it makes you feel angry. Then came the stakes. One evening I saw him out there after work, a rubber mallet in his hand, casually tapping a little orange marker into the ground. He saw me watching, gave me a neighborly wave like nothing was wrong, and went back inside. My blood went cold. This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated move. He was testing me, seeing how much he could get away with before I pushed back. I felt a knot of anger tighten in my stomach, but right behind it was this wave of disbelief. This was the guy I'd loaned my lawn aerator to, the guy whose paper I brought in when he was on vacation. We had shared beers on this very lawn, and now he was literally stealing it from me, inch by inch. So I did what any red-blooded American would do. I went to the county records office. I spent a whole afternoon in that dusty basement, squinting at microfiche copies of plat maps from 1972. And I found it. The original survey, with the iron pin locations clearly marked. I paid a licensed surveyor $200 to come out and find that pin. And when he did, We stretched that bright yellow string between the markers, and the truth was undeniable. Henderson had already encroached a full 18 inches onto my property. A foot and a half of my land, my investment, my kids' future backyard, just absorbed. Seeing that yellow string was a wake-up call. It wasn't just about dirt anymore. It was about principle. It was about the unspoken contract between neighbors, the respect for the lines that let us live side by side in peace. When you let someone cross a small boundary, they'll always try for a bigger one. It's a lesson that goes far beyond a backyard fence. Have you ever had a neighbor try to pull a fast one on you? Let me know in the comments what you did. And if you want to see how this property line war ended, make sure you're subscribed, because the showdown is coming. It started with a gut feeling, that little prickle on the back of your neck when something's just off. I was mowing my lawn one Saturday, the smell of fresh-cut grass filling the air, and I just happened to glance over at the property line. And I stopped. The mower sputtered and died because my hand had gone slack on the handle. The old oak tree. It looked different. For 20 years I'd known exactly how much of my yard was shaded by its branches in the afternoon. But now, the shadow felt smaller. The sunlight was hitting a patch of my lawn it had never touched before. My brain tried to rationalize it. Maybe the angle of the sun was weird today. Maybe I was just tired. But that's the thing about gut feelings. They're rarely wrong. I walked over to where the old rusty wire fence used to be, the one my dad and old Mr. Henderson put up decades ago. And that's when I saw it. The dirt. A clean, raw, dark line of freshly turned earth, running in a perfectly straight line from the oak tree all the way back to the road. It was subtle, maybe a 6-inch strip, but it was there. It was like someone had taken a giant pencil and redrawn the boundary, stealing a sliver of my land. My heart started thumping a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. My neighbor Dave, the guy I'd shared beers with on the 4th of July, had quietly, in the dead of night, moved the fence. He'd stolen a piece of my American dream, one shovel of dirt at a time. And the worst part? He thought I wouldn't even notice. So tell me, what's the strangest thing a neighbor has ever done to you? Drop it in the comments below, because this story is just getting started. And make sure you're subscribed, because you're not going to believe what happened next.